Brian, do you wanna,
No,
are you joining via your laptop?
no,
Oh.
I didn't bring a laptop tonight. I've read all the docs and I have
The
my
one thing
speech
that
memorized.
I think we do need to do is mute from here, mute the public.
I can promote myself.
turn the projector on.
Yeah, I thought I did.
So are we connected? And streaming? Right there.
Okay, this is good. I'm guessing we just turn this volume down.
Well, no, the owl will kick over and pick up shortly.
Does this audio come out of the owl?
Yeah.
Yeah, he said I didn't have to do, as long as we opened it, started it with audio, which we did, that it connects to the other.
Why am I hearing myself in follow? Is your computer going? Is that why? Or,
We're hearing the meeting.
yes, but am I hearing it on your laptop or
No, just
on
this.
that? That's weird.
But I don't know why the owl's not working.
So it's allowed. Now we've got the video.
Do we have audio?
All right, Carol, you get to be the guinea pig. Can you hear us? No, it froze. Hold on. We can't have that running. We can't have whatever that YouTube link was running.
Was it working perfectly fine? And that was.
No, but like we're broadcasting. Let's just do anything. There you go. Carol, can you hear us okay? We're trying to make sure everything's working here.
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Carol.
So we're up and running now.
That's good. And I'll just promote myself to host, and then we can show. Yeah. Guess what time I went to the Goldstein Chrysler Dodge Jeep dealership this morning?
In Albany,
Uh-huh.
6:30,
Guess what time I left?
2 o'clock.
6:30. No, I got there at 9. Was there just about until they closed.
The hell were you hadn't been on your car?
Everything.
Just buy a new one at that point.
Yeah, evidently, yeah, right, would have been probably more fiscally sound.
This may be it. Because Theo's not coming.
Who else is on?
Um,
Dominic?
well, Dominic and Vicky haven't said anything. And I always include them a number because they're on the sidewalk committee.
Right.
Ronnie, I think is still, he had an accident, right? So he's still doing things.
Or he's sick, one of the two, yeah, but he would be able to participate. We're not voting on
It
it.
should be, yeah, we're not, I don't think, we may have to vote on a recommendation. But at least there's 3 of us, and if he's sick, he can vote. Crystal hopefully is gonna call in, but as I said, she is dealing with some things.
And is Tom coming?
I don't know. Michael is sick. I don't know whether he's planning to join remotely.
Hoffman?
Yeah.
No, he's sick.
He's really sick.
Sick, yeah.
He doesn't have, oh, we didn't have COVID.
No, I think he just
He said he,
ran himself
yeah.
into a wall, you know, I mean, just go, and just caught.
Yeah.
Are you now the host?
I'm opening my Zoom web app. Right.
Fine. There's an H, the H is silent.
Workplace has it. It's really nice. There are a bunch of people actually in this.
In the waiting?
Yeah.
So you're allowing people in, good.
Oh.
I
Change
can-
host.
I can see that you guys are streaming the meeting on YouTube, but the link on the city website.
He's in now. Ronnie, you gotta be on camera, bud. There you go.
Yeah, it was saying informal common council meeting. That's why I was a little confused. I didn't know if I was in the right link.
We're the tech
Looks like
committee.
we are.
Yeah, the tech committee chair is getting us all connected and set up over here.
Yeah, I've been watching you guys on the YouTube live stream. I was like, it's on, but I guess maybe it wasn't like allowing people to come in.
I have all the instructions on the back of an envelope. But it's much better to have somebody who knows what they're doing.
Alrighty.
Gotta mute
You
your,
gotta, mute one of those.
on your laptop.
There it is. There it is. Muted.
All right, and we got Linda here. Hi, Linda.
Hi, Linda.
So let's see who's here. We have
Are
Ronnie.
the captions on?
Hi.
Captions are on.
Oh, perfect.
Vicky is on. Peter's on, Linda, Ronald.
Vicky, reminder, you need to be on video if you want to participate.
Well, actually,
Hold on a
no.
second. What did you say, Ryan? Excuse me?
Oh, no, but are you trying to consolidate for sidewalk and legal?
No, this is the legal committee, but
All right.
I always, as a courtesy, include, because it's such an overlap. it's
Oh, I
like-
thought we were merging the groups.
Yeah, that was my
I-
understanding too. So if they want to
I don't-
participate, they've got to be on video.
Okay,
That
but
would,
I don't mind
that's
either
just
way.
that's for the
I
OLM.
just,
So
I don't mind either way. So we have Ronnie, Linda, Carol, let's see.
Oh, I gotta share.
Ron, and Peter. So I think at this point at 7:33, we're going to call the meeting to order. We begin with roll call. Theo Anthony, not here and not joining us. Art Frick,
Here.
Ryan Wallace,
Present.
Ronnie.
Here.
Let's see, we have Vicky.
I'm here, but I'm not sure if we're supposed to be doing this, joining the two groups. I don't know.
That was not my understanding, Vicky.
Yeah, I don't think that's correct.
That's not my understanding.
Yeah, and I also think it's up to the president to decide that probably, but anyhow, it's not me to say it. I'm here though, whatever.
And Dominic, I don't think Dominic is here.
No,
Okay.
I don't see him.
Have you got that, Linda? And Morris is here. Okay. So we received minutes from Linda from our last meeting. We're not going to review those tonight, but they have been received. Oh, can you stay on the?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot I was sharing. Margaret, sorry.
So our purpose this evening is to talk about various models that Crystal and I researched. I sent documents out to everyone and to the public on these different models. Just in summary, putting Ithaca to one side for a moment. One of the documents that we sent out was from Mechanical. This was their city code. So basically what Mechanical does is they are doing the sidewalk installations and alteration and improvement, and then they bill it, half of it back to the property that benefits, and the other half is billed back to the city of Mechanical. And then ongoing maintenance, but it's unclear from their charter. It's in article section 164. Article 3 is where it is. It's unclear what is meant by the difference between alteration and keeping the sidewalk in good repair. The main issue here is that the city is doing all of the work and then billing half of it to the residents and half to the city itself. Not sure that that model would work for us for practical reasons. I don't think we have the revenue to do it, and we certainly don't have the manpower. The other one that we included, just as a payment mechanism, was City of Portland. They have a revolving loan program, and they are funding that through ARPA money, which again, I think is not really an option for us.
We're broke already there.
Yeah. So I think, are we in agreement that neither of those would really be viable for us?
I mean, the Mechanical one is interesting. I'm gonna wait till you get to the Ithaca one because I have my own sort of take that I
Okay.
want to present tonight.
Yeah, so then to summarize on Ithaca, we would have to tweak their version of this. It's a community approach. They divided the city into districts, and then the low traffic areas, all property owners, and there are no exemptions for nonprofits and so forth. All property owners have flat assessment fee annually. At the moment, it's $70. For the high traffic area, the flat assessment fee is $140, and the high traffic area also pays a frontage fee and a square footage fee, and that's it. They also have a method to allow for credit for any improvements or replacements that were done in the last 20 years. And I provided you with the documents that show the application process for that. That is based on the premise that a sidewalk's lifespan is about 20 years. And so if you have in the last 20 years done something, you will get 1/20th of your cost each year taken off from your assessment. And then let's go back to status quo, which we have at the moment, which is the code enforcement approach, which obviously hasn't worked. We are required to have a response to DOJ by the end of this year on what we are doing. So we need to talk through what some of those, what the best options would be. The one thing in Ithaca that I think does not work for us at all is they set up their district so that it's a much bigger square mile location, but they set it up so that all revenues collected in a given district have to be spent in that district. And I think my opinion is for Hudson, which is much smaller, it makes more sense for us to think of ourselves as one district.
We have to, I mean.
We have to,
You look
right?
at the redistricting
Yes,
map and you can
exactly.
just look at
Yeah.
between,
Doesn't make any sense.
no, well, it just comes down to the revenues. I mean, the south side of town as well, bigger than the north side of town.
Well, also, the other issue is that fully 1/2 of the businesses on Warren Street are in the first ward.
Correct.
And yes, there are some pretty bad sidewalks in the first ward, but there are much bigger problems in other wards.
Correct.
So to me, that's a non-starter. We need to look at this as we're one district, we're one community. We put everything into a pot and proceed from there. And the only which we talked about last time, zoning approach I would take is trying to identify high priority zones so that we start doing work where it needs to get done as quickly as possible.
Oh,
So
go ahead.
those are the models. Let me finish one last thing.
Yep.
Which I put in the agenda, I think. Yes, I did. Potential revenue sources, because this also comes into who needs to be brought into the pool of people in the community approach. So we have on the western end of town, we have DRI district money, which will go towards solving some of those problems. We have the potential for federal money, which when I spoke to Michael, he's not expecting to hear on that really before December. We're not going to know. And, we got through to the second phase apparently, but that's an unknown. And then we have whatever we can raise through assessments. In talking about who should be included and so forth, I think when we take a community approach, we all participate, all property owners, regardless of whether you're in a DRI area or not, regardless of whether when the federal money comes in, if it does, that you would be benefited by repairs that are being done using those funds. We all pool in together and we approach it as a community. That's kind of the synopsis of what we've pulled together. And so I'm going to stop now and listen to what people have to say.
All right, so I've gotten, I had a laugh, Peter Bujano, who's on this call, has heard me opine about this before, and the timing of the Albany article was extremely poignant. I mean, Albany's just taking the bull by the horns and solving this, right? I look at this as it's been a failure of the city and code enforcement for 20+ years. Like I would actually like to have, like when was the last sidewalk violation provided to a homeowner, right? I mean, I could probably argue that it was maybe 40 years. Like I don't remember it in the entire time I've been alive in this city. So the idea of now going through the assessments to the public while we're sitting on the brink of a recession, like I can't quite agree with that. I also don't think our existing laws and model is bad if we actually light a fire under code enforcement to get it done. So part of me is wondering, we're what, 2.1 square mile city in total, right? Albany's first standard, and I'd like to thank Vicky because I know she's the only other council person that's done this besides myself, and I've done it mapped, is, I mean, the third has been inventoried. It's been inventoried for over a year before this current council took its seats. Frankly, we should look at the free, like we kind of need to give the people a freebie here. Do we bond it? We don't have the amount of sidewalks the way that Albany does. We have a rolling bond that is still going on and that's open through the treasurer's office right now. Do we say, we are going to fix this? We kind of owe the people, we kind of owe the city because the city failed in following up on code enforcement. It gets paid off through taxes over the course of what, 10+ years. And then ultimately moving forward from that 10-year point on, or whatever it is, I do like a bit of the Ithaca approach, but I don't know if the assessments are the way to go. Do we put it back on the homeowners now and actually create a mechanism whereby annually the council and code enforcement actually have to go out and inspect? it puts joint shared responsibility on it. I mean, Peter, I know you're on this call too. I don't know if there's an option to be able to move enforcement and flagging out of the Office of Code Enforcement, which has 2 people, and into the Office of DPW, whose crews are driving all around the city and seeing the conditions of the streets and sidewalks at all times, and ultimately are the ones that end up repairing.
Peter, one thing I did want to mention on the Albany document, I did post it out for tonight's meeting. I have not had time. I think one thing about that was really helpful was looking at getting pricing on what it would cost to actually do the work. And so I know that Crystal is looking into that, and she has contacted Albany, is trying to get information on that. So I don't think tonight we're going to be able to talk much about the cost of what it would be to do this. I think we have to just, that's going to need more
Yeah.
work. But yes, I think that Albany article was actually.
I mean, it was,
very
and you all know that I've been waiting a couple of weeks to say this, because it's exactly what I put in writing to you all before the last meeting that I wasn't able to attend.
Yeah.
So it's, again, I just look at it as the city's failed in enforcement. How do you turn around and say, well, we're going to be doing a special assessment? It's like, we failed, so we're punishing you. I think we need to figure out, like, we need to own it and work within our own existing budget. And if we've got that rolling bond, and more importantly, I think the DOJ would agree, if we can rely on Peter, who has incredible procurement capabilities and skills, to help us run that assessment. Does anybody recall what the total cost was referenced in the Albany article? Was it 20 million?
20 million. 20 million.
20 million for something the size of Albany, right? Which is how big compared to
282 miles of sidewalk.
versus maybe what we've got, right? So if we're talking max maybe 5 million or something like that, like, it's doable in terms of paying it off over time. But then how do we actually put the teeth back into it that, okay, we gave you the freebie, now your civic duty is to maintain it if you are a property owner that's there. I'd actually be interested in hearing from, Carol, if you would be willing to speak tonight, because, one of the things that I wrestle with is a bit of the historic preservation element, because there are some homes in the city that have beautifully maintained the original slate sidewalks from the time that those buildings were put up. Right? We need to figure out what we do in that case, because the ADA compliancy that we have requires uniformity and smoothness and whatnot. And, I personally struggle and wrestle with the idea of how do we upend something that has original look, feel, installation in that case.
So,
Do we have any context in terms of what Albany did in that situation? Like, I would imagine there are some.
I think they're just going forward and doing it. They have designated historic districts somewhat in the way that we do as well. So like places in front of like the Immaculate Conception Cathedral, some of the Center Square neighborhoods and whatnot. But if you've been through there at all recently, I mean, like, it's as dangerous. I mean, it's more dangerous than walking on half of ours. I mean, we're talking tree roots have things completely uprooted. So they're at a point, unfortunately, where things have gotten so bad where it is almost better just rip and replace in total. And in terms of being able to start, right? I mean, I think we all know Warren Street being the main thoroughfare top to bottom. And then I think it's just kind of let's equally build out on all areas of the city. Maybe you start in the middle and build out. I mean, that kind of
and
covers
Warren is also in the best repair.
some places. I
There are a
mean,
couple of spots.
and I can tell you in the third, because I've done the work and
Right.
made it chronological in a GIS map, that if anybody would like it, let me know. What's been missing. I actually have to give the hospital credit, because not too long after I did the inventory in the third, the hospital has repaired the ones on Prospect that were missing, so.
So Art, what are your thoughts on the different approaches?
I think that I am inclined to agree with Councilmember Wallace in that we need to figure out a way to fund initial repair and then future-proof the plan moving forward.
There needs to be action. Let's use the nomenclature. Let's not kick it down the sidewalk for the next council the way it's been presented for us.
Well, like, I mean, I think that. Yeah, I don't know that I have anything else to offer up, but I think that seems like a fairly salient approach, because we just didn't do the job for the last 20 years, like.
Plus,
So
I mean,
I'm
plus.
gonna throw something out here. I hear what both of you are saying. Actually, no, before I do, Ronnie, what are your thoughts on the various approaches?
I definitely agree with Councilmember Wallace in that the city has failed for, possibly 20 to 40 years in keeping the code. And we have to find a equitable way to kind of fund this repairs and, get our city accessible. I looked into the Albany document, and they're projecting for about 5.5 miles of for every 5.5 miles of sidewalk that needs to be repaired, their cost is 1 million. So I can't imagine Hudson has more than maybe 10 miles at most. And not necessarily all 10 miles need to be repaired, right? So, your projection of 5 million is probably a way higher cost than we really need to even project for. So,
And that, and Ronnie, remember, that also makes sure that we're being compliant with every intersection, having the ADA capability, like for a wheelchair to get in. I can't tell you the number of times I get approached at Wonder Bar by people that actually have to go in like the back alley because nothing on that corner of 8th has the curb. You know exactly what we're talking about. Yeah, they end up going through like literally through the alley and through the back,
right. So, I mean, we definitely have to, I'm definitely leaning towards what Ryan is saying, but we also have to try to exhaust any other sources of, funding if we possibly can. I mean, I'm not sure if previous councils have already explored those options, and this is what we have. This is where we end up, where there is no other funding except for the bond. But we also have to try to be as fiscally responsible as possible, so that the whole thing is not funded, if possible, from other sources. It's not completely on the taxpayers too, even though.
So
The bond allows for the DRI contribution and any potential grant still as well. It's just the kind of the catch-all for the rest of what we need to do to have something actionable to move forward.
So, since this is the direction, I'm in favor of a community approach and an ethical approach and so forth. That's where I am. That's not where I started. I started actually on the code enforcement side when I first started looking at this. And just given that it's not working, it hasn't worked, and we can't just keep beating our heads against a wall, because that's obviously not, hasn't worked for 20 years. It's not suddenly going to work. We don't have the manpower to do that properly.
No, but what we have the ability to is to get this started in a funding mechanism, and then worry about the transference of ownership outside of a 2-person department to something that might be more better equipped within city resourcing.
I want to come back to listening to the fact that all of you are pretty much looking at the city has to take responsibility, looking again at mechanical. So under code enforcement, if I were found to have a deficient sidewalk, 100% of the onus would be on me to replace it or repair it, right? That's my responsibility. So the fact that we haven't done code enforcement, I'm not completely on board with, well, because we have failed, therefore we have to find some way to fund the whole thing. If we really wanted to go that route, then I think we ought to be considering something like Mechanicville, where they look at, and if something needs to be replaced, whatever, in the first round, they bill half of the cost to the property owner, and the city does the rest. So that's better than just going in with code enforcement and saying, okay, you need to replace your sidewalk and the full cost goes to the homeowner or the property owner. They're not all homes.
But I still think that that needs to be a secondary action, right? I mean, because I would then challenge you to go do the homework now and come back and report to us, when's the last time Mechanicville enforced its code on sidewalk? Right, so before whatever their current legislation is, were they doing it a different way? What was the frequency with which they were doing it? Because we can actually say here that we haven't been alerted to. I mean, in the time I've sat on this and the previous council, and I know Dewan is here and has served on a few councils. You know, Linda has sat through this. Tom has presided over a few councils. Like, when have any of us ever heard of an actual fine going out for sidewalk maintenance? Right, so I don't think the approach is bad. What I'm suggesting again is we need to figure out there's action and then there's the change in the code that we need. My suggestion on action is we kind of need to eat this one because I don't think any of us know that anything's actually happened. And the time it's going to take to get this process in place, it could be 2 years before we do anything. So again, we're kicking it down the street. Action it, get it done, put a system in place that actually corrects maintenance, enforcement, and oversight moving forward. So it can be a hybrid model approach.
Vicky, did you want to offer your view?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was trying to figure out my phone. And my camera doesn't work. Okay, so first of all, do we have any examples of municipalities that code enforcement has worked? I mean, I'm sure these examples we're having or we're exploring these are all cases where the property owners have not fixed them, code enforcement had not enforcement, and then the city has to come up with all these legal maneuvers. So I'm just wondering, before that, there must have been cases.
Portland, it relies on enforcement, and Mechanicville is also an enforcement model.
Okay, so I mean, I'd like to know if that works, if people are happy with their sidewalks. And furthermore, whatever we're doing now, we have to understand that everything is going to have to be maintenance of those sidewalks is a nightmare. I'm not talking about snow shoveling and stuff like that. I'm talking about that, these slabs crack, move. There's so many things happen that because of the weather conditions. So it's an ongoing thing that even if we come up with the money and we fix them once, the code enforcement will have to be involved. It's not in one time where we're gonna just do it and wipe our hands and it's over.
Vicky, we're aware of that. That's not what we're saying.
Yeah, I know. No, I understand. I'm agreeing with what you're saying. I'm just saying whatever we put in place we have to explore all these different angles. But I just believe that it has to be a combination of all. And again, I'm going to go back to the law that I said that last time at the meeting. I think we need to move faster, and having any transaction point on sale transaction will help a lot,
So Dewan is also on, I believe, and you have some background in this. Dewan, do you want to weigh in on what your perspective is on how we should approach it? You may be muted. Okay.
You're driving, thank you. But the thing is, we had a lot of meetings regarding the sidewalk and stuff like that. But there's nothing solution came up. But we had some, study and stuff like that. But actually, I agree with Ryan. We need action, but we never had action.
I'm having trouble hearing.
Dewan, we can't hear you. You're breaking up.
Yeah, I'm actually driving and there's not good signal over here sometimes. But I'm just saying, we had a lot of meetings about sidewalks, but we never had we don't take any action prior council.
The other thing I just want to remind you all is, and I know she couldn't be here tonight, but Crystal's working on the resolution for GoGov. That app provides the capability for citizens to participate in the cataloging process. So in terms of enforcement moving forward, there's the ability to snap a picture, have your GPS location, and it alerts code enforcement, DPW, the council member whose ward it happened in. So there is a system of accountability that then comes in to push to be like, hey, we need to get this done. So our tech committee is already putting in the, how can we help code enforcement here for a lift that I've already solved for by going paperless, because we're saving the money annually so that we can afford that app. So.
Looking
Can I
for, I'm sorry, Vicky, I just want to hear from Tom. I'm looking for, trying to get everybody on the council an opportunity to speak. Tom is on, I see. Tom, can you hear us?
Any thoughts, Thomas?
Basically, I agree with Ryan.
And you agree in the sense that the entire cost of the first go around here should be borne by the city?
I don't think we have much choice. There is some, I didn't hear, I came in late.
I'll repeat it, Tom. So
No, but the $5 million number might be way off, I've been told.
yeah, if Ronnie's correct, like that may be high, right? And I'm estimating at the high end of everything. Say it's even half of that. Say it's 2.5 million, which is
Can I
not.
just say why it might be off? I talked to Rob Perry, and his suggestion is many of the non-compliant sites do not need full replacement. They could be shaved down in the way that they have been. Go ahead.
And Ronnie and I have sort of talked about this before. Do you want to bring up sort of like what your concern was about people that have good sidewalks? Ronnie, you there?
Oh, yeah. So the only negative aspect of what Ryan's plan, well, that I can foresee is that there might be residents that are because obviously if we pay for it as a city, the taxes are going to go up, and that's how we're going to end up recouping the money, right? So what if I'm a resident that has kept up my sidewalks, and I hope this is not the case. I don't think this is going to be the case, but it is a possibility that we might have to deal with where residents are not on board with the plan of the city fully paying for the whole thing. So
but then the benefit, right, is if their sidewalks are in good standing,
yeah,
we save that money. That's stuff that doesn't have to be replaced. It's actually a benefit, right? I mean, that's what we have to communicate. So it's like, if your stuff is up to par, thank you. It's not rip and replace everything. It's let's take care of everybody else that we know that we have to do. And we can get judicious about it, right? Like there are areas like around the theater, which we know is going to be an active construction site, potentially, depending on what we do, right? So do we make the judicious decision to say, like, if there are active construction areas, right, whatever is going to be planned near the depot district that is going to have much more wear and tear because of construction vehicles, they get deprioritized for the short term to focus on the more settled residential areas, right? And it's a point of, it needs to be done.
Ronnie, think of it this way. We all pay school taxes. Not all of us have kids in school.
Exactly.
I mean, there are
That's
just
fair
some
too.
taxes that don't benefit everyone. Some things we pay for that don't benefit everyone. Just
exactly. And I mean, the fact is that we are being forced to make these repairs, not only because we as a city should be providing safe walking, but the federal government has mandated that we should. So I don't think it's gonna be a big concern, but I figured I'd bring it up because there's always possibility that somebody doesn't want to pay.
Right, you're right. I mean, but it'll be our job to explain all that.
Yeah. We'll definitely have to put the message out in the right context.
I'm not following
His concern was, okay, so say your sidewalks are like you replace them, right? You're gonna say, well, why am I chipping in?
No, but I thought he was supporting your approach of the city doing.
He is, but what he was saying, what we were bringing up though is that you're gonna get pushback from people that are gonna say, but mine are fine, why
Oh,
should
in
I
the
have to
community
pay?
approach, you mean?
Correct.
Oh, okay, yes, well, yeah, I mean, I have, and Tom is, I agree with Tom on that, but the answer to that is that we're functioning as a community. And if you have the public school situation is the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Another one is water districts, even if you don't have
Yeah.
water, the main water mains coming in, benefiting from fire and so forth, being able to access water and so forth. So that I would not, we can communicate that, and I have mentioned to Tom the other night that, you know, whatever we're doing here, we're gonna have to have a public hearing
So here's,
very close, very soon. But-
here's the intersectional piece though. So Peter Bujano, like, I know that this is your garbage can thing, right? So we know that there is also wiring work that's gonna need to be done as part of the NIPA replacement, right? And I think that there was some discussion as well about updating, I don't know if it's the electrical wiring that runs through the streets or what it is specifically, but Rob Perry presented to us last. He brought up that there's a plan to update some of that wiring. All of that needs to be coordinated together. And the other benefit that we get is there is money from the state when you can start layering in projects that actually serve multiple benefits and coordinate them in a way that all things can be done together at once to save time and efficiency. You get bonuses and benefits back for that, as well as you can apply for grants for stuff like that. So there's another method of funding if we smartly work to say, with the sidewalk project, if we are planning to bond what that cost is, how do we then make sure that we're timing it and coordinating it with DPW and the other organizations that actually need to do the replacements in the districts that they need to do?
Hold on 1 second, I can't hear us.
I
Oh.
lost my internet. I got dropped.
Can you hear us now, Linda?
Can't hear you.
Ronnie, can you hear us live time?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Linda, it might be your connection. If you want to kill your video, that'll give you better bandwidth. Can you hear us a little bit better?
Not at all.
No.
I mean, it totally could also be our end.
I was gonna say.
A good alternative might be just to use the YouTube streaming link instead of being on the meeting itself, because she's just taking records for us, right?
No, we're pretty good. We're at like 175 down.
So, Tom, and unfortunately, Michael is sick this evening, so he couldn't join us. One of the things I think that whatever approach we take or whatever recommendations we're gonna make to the council, the full council, we have to be really cognizant of what DOJ is going to find to be an acceptable solution. So what I'm hearing, the consensus I'm hearing from this group this evening is a desire to have an approach that looks at having the city take responsibility for this.
For its
And
inaction.
then, right, initially, and then having a backup plan of adequate code enforcement once issues are solved and so
Which-
forth.
Part of it falls into using our app,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
So, Tom, do you think that that is something you have been, I think, dealing with Michael and the mayor on DOJ? Do you think that that is something that would be acceptable?
I have not spent a lot of time on this. It is unfortunate Michael can't answer that because I do not know the timeline for, when they will decide. I hope it's acceptable. I mean, they did not, in the last meeting that we had with them, which I did attend, they did not really make it clear what they would find acceptable. They did say that they would like to see something from the council by the end of the year. That the council is acting on this in some fashion. They did not say exactly what fashion, but I think this would be, if we did this, I think that would get us through that stage. Then, of course, we'd actually have to do it.
Yeah, and,
So
and-
that's, I want to get to the, we have to do it.
yeah, that's the biggest thing. And Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, is it July of next year is Heather's deadline to have, because there's multiple things that are rolling in this open bond. I mean, that's the thing, like, there's big items, like we're gonna be talking about the, Springbrook, the cloud migration and upgrade that we need for
Right.
all of our tax records, so they can be
Yeah.
migrated to the cloud, like that's 60, 70K, like all of that goes into this, and it's infrastructure upgrades that are necessary.
Right.
And so that's what, I mean, like that bond exists for all of those line items.
And to remind everyone, we have a AAA rating.
Right.
So, you know, we're not approaching any disaster in terms of our bond, in terms of our borrowing and our bonds. I mean, we do carry a couple bond payments that are regrettable, but that's a whole nother story. So we can do it, as Heather has pointed out. And you know, we'd have to ask her about the timeline for when we have to apply and, you know, when she has to go out.
Yeah,
and do-
I thought she said July, I could be wrong, but yes, we'll check with Heather.
So the doing it part.
RFP, RFQ, Mr. Peter Bujano.
Right, because obviously in-house, we do not have the manpower to do this. Right, Peter?
I think Rob would argue that, you know, I think it would be a monumental additional task or scope of work for DPW as it is today. So, you know, there's some efficiency and contracting this out. I've got some ideas when we get into the nitty gritty on how to proceed with the actual construction of it. And I've got some ideas that I can.
Peter?
Yes.
Is one of those ideas that whoever ends up getting the contract for the sidewalks in the DRI district would be a natural sort of
Well,
contractor?
I think I was thinking more along the lines of creating a term contract, a unit-based contract where we put an RFP out and we solicit a contractor and we give them a contract to place concrete on a unit price basis. And so that not only can the city use him for that rate, it's like a state contract when you buy vehicles, gasoline.
Right.
So we would
Right.
issue our own unit price contract and units of concrete placed. So this contractor would understand that he could do, you know, 10 yards one week and maybe 110 yards the next week, but they would all bid on a specific unit cost and understanding that they would be on call for a duration of the year, subject to review. And then they would go out and homeowners would get the same value as the city gets. It would be a discounted rate or a lower rate, a bid rate, so that if a homeowner wanted to improve something rather than what the city wants to do, they would get that same rate. I was thinking along that lines initially. Now, going back to your plan, again, I haven't been intimately involved in this, but the DRI is going to take care of some of the 2 square miles or the number of feet, number of miles of sidewalk, right? So I think when you propose this to DOJ is concerned about the DOJ piece, the program piece, the space that was identified in the work that was done by Hyman Hayes, right? So that study that so that's the priority in my mind for DOJ.
Right.
We address them by saying part of DOJ, here's what's been identified. Part of it is we should quantify all this. And part of it is in the, 2nd Street below, and then the rest of it for programming. Second phase is, and Vicky and I had the occasion to visit a complaint in Paddock Place recently, and there's no sidewalks up there, right? So the boulevards in certain areas, in the Paddock Place, River Edge, that area, Jocelyn, there's no sidewalks. Now, there's a lot of traffic we noted, so that's something to consider too, but that's not DOJ's concern, and that's not our immediate concern to address DOJ. But that's something down the road. So if those people wanted to put sidewalks in and we had this unit price contract, they could access it as well. We also noted, Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, I also like it because I feel like that's part of the enforcement mechanism, right? Is that if you're able to negotiate like a 10-year rate on it, Like, and then it gets renegotiated every 10 years, depending on what the cost of materials are, right? Like you are effectively locking in then a method where if you wanted to go about it the community rate, right, or community way, right? If we rewrite past doing the, let's mea culpa and do this.
Once we get to the point where, okay, now.
Right, now it's the homeowner's
Now it's
responsibility.
gonna happen.
Oh, you can't afford to do it. We could actually offer a few ways to do it, right? It's the, we pay half, you pay half. It's the stay with what we've got, you pay the whole thing. Maybe you can't afford the upfront money, but based on the unit cost then that was pre-established by the city, as Peter's talking about, we'll come in and do it for you. And then it's like maybe assessed over the cost of, or course of 10 years on your taxes like a lien.
Right, but if what we're doing, if what we're proposing is that we have an approach where the city takes ownership of the current problem, and we do, as Peter is saying, get an RFP and get a contract out
Correct.
for, identify the priority areas to be fixed and so forth, the city's taking the lead on that. The community thing doesn't come into play in that at all.
No. But what I'm saying
So I'm
is,
not
again,
following that.
right, part one,
Mhm.
action, get it done. Part two, figure out are we sticking with code enforcement and app? Are we gonna modify the rules going forward? I
Oh, I
think
see
we
what you're saying.
we need two plans here.
Yeah.
One to
I
address
see
the
what you're saying.
immediate and then one to make sure we don't find ourselves
Right.
in the same problem 20 years from now.
Yeah, right, and the community thing, it takes into consideration, I mean, they were fixing things, but it also takes into consideration, the other model also takes into consideration maintenance.
Correct.
There's another issue happening also with new homeowners coming in, replacing sidewalks. I was called recently with the code enforcement officer to meet with an architect on State Street. New home being built on State Street, old ones demolished, new home being placed, that wants to put a new sidewalk in under the new standards. So the new standards raise that sidewalk 6 inches above both sides of the adjoining neighbors. So the architect asked me, well, what do I do? I mean, what am I supposed to do here? I can't fix everybody's sidewalk. So he's going to put a slope in on the neighboring sidewalk at his cost, at his homeowner's cost on both sides to get up to grade to the code conforming sidewalk. That's really crazy what's happening.
I want to, Peter, while we're on that, I want to bring up something that I remember that the CAC had brought up and proposed. And I spoke at length to some people that are engineers with state DOT on this. They had proposed making the permeable sidewalks for water runoff and whatnot. We sit mainly on clay soil. And how old are the foundations that run up and down Warren Street? The last thing that we need to do is start working with a method that brings water closer to foundations of these historic buildings. We'll end up like the problem that Saratoga has on Broadway where the buildings are sinking.
Well, take a look at the sidewalks on State Street, particularly the north side of it, right above 4th Street. There's no curbs. And so someone's putting in a new home, a new sidewalk. There's no curbing on either side of the new sidewalk going in. It's presenting a problem. So we're going to get those individual new sidewalks that are to city code that are just not going to work with the rest of it. So I think the idea of, let's fix everything, bite the bullet and fix everything, it is a noble idea. And I think there's some benefit to it, but just take a look at what the example I just said to you. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, how does what
Peter, you're talking at the intersection in front of Board of Elections?
Yes.
The reason that, are you talking about on the John L. Edwards side where the traffic veers off onto Harry Howard?
No, on the State Street side going up, a couple houses up from the Moranti, we call it the Moranti store when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right, go up two houses from that and you'll see what I mean. There's a new home going in there, a new house being built.
Part of that was there because before the sidewalks were fixed around the library, wasn't there a crosswalk midway there? And then what they used to do is they would make sure that people crossed in the middle of that street versus at the corners of that street. So I think that's part of the old method of why you're saying like there's no downslope or anything else but the curb that's there.
Just take a look at that next time you're near that area and see what I'm talking about. I think it's being placed right now. So anyway, that's an example. The other thing I wanted to bring up whatever happens, you have to be reminded that in the code, C 22-18, repair of sidewalks, right? It says the Commissioner of Public Works has all this power to require owner occupant right to make repairs, etc. So whatever is written, that's a code now, it's a law now, has to be squared with the city will do this, because right here it says owner's responsible to do the repair and the commissioner does all these things. And that's what you're talking about. It hasn't been enforced for 20 years or more, but you need to square that piece because that exists currently. And it talks about fines, 30 days, there's timelines to it, there's penalties, etc. So just take a look at that.
Definitely have to modify the code. No matter what approach we take, Peter, we're gonna have to change the code.
Yeah. I just want to make sure it's squared so that there's no issue.
Some of the sample documents that we sent out had, legislation that was put in place to, to put in these different models and methods and so forth. But yes, the code would, no matter what route we go, the code has to be changed.
I just wanted to make sure that was on the table, that it gets squared somehow when the documents get put together. So that's my thought. I think a unit pricing contract that is bid and it can be done every 2 years, it can be done every year, allows anybody to use the city's pricing to improve their own sidewalks, whether they're in a district or whether they're in the a DOJ section required programming access space, or if it's on a boulevard or whatever. They can still utilize that contract, and we would make the bid document, talk about that. And I think contractors would like that. They would know they have work, they would know the unit pricing, they would know things, there would be escalation. It's just like buying gas from the state contract or buying cars from the state contract. But I would develop language such that it would be accessible to all, and I think it's a good opportunity. I think that's a good way to go with this.
Accessible to all. This is where, again, I stick by what we did. The first thing was to remind people of what our existing rules were and get that letter out, right? And so now what we realize is like, hey, you all know what the law is currently, right? We realize that we haven't enforced it long enough. Let's fix it. Part two, moving forward, update the code, right? So there's 30-day notice. If by 90 days it's not enacted, it goes on your own property taxes. The city fixes it at the prefix cost that Peter's talking about. This way, what you're doing is you're providing an instant switch for action in the code where you're giving 3 months of a courtesy to the resident that's in there. You really want to take it further, right? You could start looking at, and it's a little archaic, but if you're buying or selling the property and it is in need of repair, that needs to be addressed in the terms of sale.
And the good thing about having that unit price contract, it's at the ready. So they know they have to respond to a request for pouring concrete, for working, for whatever. We would identify curb cuts, we would identify curbing, we would identify unit pricing for ramps, whatever we need to identify would be in there, and there'd be a unit price for that. And they would know in the contract document that would say they have to respond within X number of days. Obviously, we can't do it in the winter, but we'd work all that through, right? So I think it's at the ready. It gives us a vehicle, a tool to act quickly on some of these issues.
To Peter's point, say that the contract window is 90 days for them as well. That's perfect. So that all the citizens have to really then put up with is 6 months of the thing from the problem from the date that it's identified. Which again, going back to the app, part of that will be on the citizens to help us identify as well, and code enforcement and DPW and all of us, right? I mean, he dropped off the call, but my God, how many emails do we get from Bill Houston about missing sidewalk curbs right in front of City Hall, right?
So let me see, do we have any raised hands there?
No.
Okay. Any last thoughts from anyone? We can, at our next council meeting, we can bring these thoughts forward.
Ron Kopnicki's hands up. Go ahead, Ron.
Yes, Matt McGee would like to speak first. We're both on the same computer.
Go ahead, Matt.
If that's all right.
Yes, no, code enforcement, there's a 9-inch high requirement for curbs. And in many instances, when this is complied with, the basement windows end out below sidewalk level. And, with an antique house, this could make a difference. And in other situations, there are a few houses that have their original marble steps. And if you look at them, some of the steps are buried down in the cement already. These are unfortunate things to be doing in a historic city like Hudson. And I think that these things should be taken into consideration. It's also damaging.
I don't know if you joined late or not, Matt, but I brought up that exact same point earlier. And I also think it's something about, my point in particular was about, think of some of the homes that have the original slate sidewalks from when the buildings were built and that have been immaculately kept. There are a few examples of them here in Hudson still. And how do you go about asking somebody to rip up what is absolutely original? I don't agree with that. So I'm with you.
There is an instance of a sidewalk here made of brick, which is about 200 years old. I think it would be disgraceful.
Made of brick.
Yes, it's the original brick sidewalk.
That's how well not just
It's
made,
very
but
long.
how-
And it has marble additions, drainage.
And I think you make a good point, right? Like that's the exception. Like if it's in good shape, right?
Well,
And I
it's in
think-
reasonable shape. It's sunken, but it's 200 years old. And it's really a rarity. I don't think there are many 200-year-old brick sidewalks.
No, and I think
The whole country, forget about in Hudson.
it's only about the size of 2 sidewalk squares too, if I'm thinking of the same one. And I mean, I think that's something we can
It's
look,
actually rather long.
we can look at, is that something that we can work with the homeowner to preserve, right? I think.
Well,
we bring up-
could be.
Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, the question is, when we have a historic sidewalk that we want to preserve because of its historic and it's Hudson, how does DOJ look at that? I guess is the question we're trying
Well,
to.
DOJ has not required that the entire city of Hudson meet their standards.
Right. What I'm saying is in the area, on the route that they've identified.
On the route that they've identified is this.
If we find a historic sidewalk that we'd like to preserve, how would DOJ address that? I guess is my question. I'm not saying anywhere in DOJ's settlement.
Well, this is Ron Kopnicki. Can I just, because this question occurred to me, does ADA compliance require an absolute mandate of a particular material or not? In other words, could an older historic material be as compliant as a later material? And does ADA compliance mean that the whole city, basically all the sidewalks must conform exactly in material? And
No, it does.
I don't believe it does. I think it relates only to access for people with disabilities.
Access and levelness.
Yeah. And that's part
Well,
of
anyway, I would like to wind up. It is interesting to go around and look at the sidewalks. I actually found a cement sidewalk that was dated 1916. There are beautiful stones at the Greek Orthodox Church on the sidewalk there that have mica in them. I think these things should be, looked at and thought about. And thank you very much for your time.
Margaret, can you take the questions about the historic preservation to Michael, just for him to get an answer to DOJ?
Yeah.
Perfect. Any other, I don't see any other hands.
I don't see any more hands. Are there any more? Okay, so what we're going to do then is bring what the consensus opinion here appears to be, that the city take ownership. We come up with a plan to do that. that we, obviously we have to fix code. And that we then have, the second phase approach, which is the actual maintenance, which is on the,
Which requires rewriting the code. Updating the
that's
code.
correct.
Yep.
and then we have a couple of pieces to follow up on with Michael, and I think that's where we are.
I think it's good.
Okay, with that, motion to adjourn,
A motion.
second from Art, so that was Ryan and Art, Linda.
Thanks for attending, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Have
Have a good night.
Night.
Good night.